they weren't chosen by accident. Jurors in Disguise, a jury investigations podcast, exposes jurors who lied their way onto the jury to secure a guilty verdict. Each episode, owner and founder MaryRose Peterson pulls back the curtain on real cases, revealing misconduct buried in lies beyond the gavel. Visit us on YouTube at youtube.com/@juryinvestigations.
Hello and welcome to another podcast of Jurors in Disguise. My name is MaryRose Peterson and I own Covert Jury Investigations. My son-in-law came up with a great title for this. Thank you, Sean. This show is called Denial Doesn't Mean Done. These are some of the things that the judges said to the prospective jurors when they welcomed them into their courtroom. Now I want you to be the judge. Do you think, knowing now, and this case was in Georgia, knowing now that this client of ours was denied by the lower court, which means the trial court, you tell me, do you think that the judge meant it when he said, this oath is what we call a voir dire oath. It's an oath that goes to your competency to serve as a juror in this case. This oath is given to you and you take the oath. Then counsel will begin to ask you questions about your qualifications, and they'll tell you, and I'm telling you now, nothing's going to be asked to try to embarrass or hurt anyone. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to see if you have any bias. The purpose is to see if you know these people. The purpose is to see what your experiences are and if that would make you a good fit for this particular jury. Having said that, I want to give you this oath called the voir dire or the competency oath. Raise your right hands, and after I finished, either say, I do swear, or I affirm. You shall give truthful answers to all questions as may be asked by this court or its authority, including all questions asked by the parties or their attorneys concerning your qualifications as a juror in the case of State versus our client. So help you God. All the jurors answered either I do swear or I affirm. All the jurors. That means the jurors that were ultimately chosen for the jury. That means the juror that we found lied to every question asked of her after she swore to tell the truth in this oath. That was one case. That case was in Georgia. This is another one from Florida. The judge said, I'm going to ask you a number of questions right now. If any of those questions apply to you, I want you to raise your card until I've had a chance to recognize you. If you don't raise your card in connection with an answer or question, I'll take it for granted that the question does not apply to you at all. I remind you that you are under oath at this point in time, and if you would willfully fail to give me an honest answer, that would constitute contempt of court. If you are not certain about whether to raise your hand, raise it, and we can determine if indeed the question does apply to you. What did the judge do in this case when our client, who is a female, went back to court? Yeah, you guessed it. Denied. This one is from Alabama. The judge said, I'm going to ask you some questions that touch on your qualifications to be jurors in this particular case. You remain under the same oath that you were given earlier for the purposes of my questions and for purposes of the attorney's questions in what we call the voir dire or voir dire examination. It is very important that you listen to the questions and fully answer the questions. Parties to a case are entitled to true and honest answers to these questions, and the fairness of the jury system depends on true, honest, and complete answers. Now, knowing that this case has already been denied, do you think the judge meant it when he said that? I don't. And now I feel like the judges are lying. They don't mean these words. If they did, our client would be home, not languishing in prison. The judge said, "What we're here for today is voir dire." And that is a process in which the attorneys in the court and the jurors get to interact. The attorneys are going to be asking questions, and they're going to be asking you what we call to speak the truth. Even if what your opinion is not going along with everybody else in the panel, if you would just tell the attorneys the truth to the questions they ask, and there's no right or wrong answer, there's only your opinion and how you feel about a particular issue or issues that you've had in your life, we need you to share this with the attorneys. I'm going to read you the information in this case, and then I'm going to ask if you have any biases against this defendant. The juror in question, we found, had quite the bias. In fact, we found dozens of statements that he made on his daughter's social media talking about how he hates Africans and Latinos. In fact, at one point, he said he had to cross over into Georgia for the weekend just to get away from all the Africans and Latinos. Our client's last name is Garcia. I'll leave it at that. Oh, I will say, denied. Denied. We went back into court proving that this juror did not tell the truth on his questionnaire or during the voir dire and was as biased a juror as I've ever seen. And yet, how do you deny something like that? Well, the judge did. Why? Because they can. Because judges, it seems, have no accountability. Oh, yes, there's a Judicial Qualifications Commission. It's made up of 3 judges who judge judges. At the end of the day, judges apparently believe, at least the ones in our cases, that it's laws for thee and not for me. Because if they truly believed what they said to the prospective jurors, when we showed them that the juror came in there and lied to your face, our clients would be home. Another case. The judge said, "Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Shortly, the court, counsel for the state, and counsel for the defendant will be asking you questions touching on your qualifications to serve as a juror in this case. This part of the case is known as the voir dire examination. Voir dire means you already know. Accordingly, as long as your answers to all questions are truthful, there are no wrong answers. The voir dire examination is for the purpose of determining if your decision in this case would in any way be influenced by opinions which you now hold or by some personal experience or special knowledge that you have concerning the subject matter to be tried. The object is to obtain jurors who will impartially try the issues of the case based upon the evidence presented in the courtroom without any guilty influenced by any other factors. Please understand this questioning is not for the purpose of prying into your affairs for personal reasons. It's only for the purpose of obtaining an impartial jury." Didn't mean it. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Didn't mean it. Didn't mean any of this. No juror interview. No hearing. No new trial. Nothing. Just. So who's the liar now? Is it just the jurors? I don't think so. Here's another one. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm belaboring the point. Maybe you get the idea, I'm sure. One of the things that your main job of a jury is to decide what evidence is reliable. It's up to each one of you to individually, as a human being, listen to the evidence and decide what evidence is reliable, what evidence is not reliable, what evidence you might accept, what evidence you might reject or not believe. So let me ask you, viewing audience, how is it that a person who lied to get on a jury is in charge of figuring out who's actually lying during the trial, because they can't both be true. The defendant is saying, I didn't do this. And everyone who's testifying saying, yes, you did. So the jury has to figure out at the end of the day who's telling the truth. Again, game show, to tell the truth. Well, if you're a juror who lied, your credibility's in the toilet. How can you be counted on to decide who's being truthful? Well, you can't, in my opinion. It's absurd. But that's what judge after judge after judge after judge says. Denied, denied, denied. Good morning, I'm a circuit judge. I have the opportunity to ask you questions. The purpose of this part of the trial is determined in any way. If you have any special knowledge or experience, it's the only time you get to speak and talk to us. So please tell the truth. Please tell the truth. Be honest. Be forthcoming. If there's something that we should know, raise your hand, get our attention, and say, hey, you didn't ask me this question, but I think you should have, because I've got a story to tell. And that makes me an inappropriate juror for this particular jury. We are going to have to make judgments about who we think would be the best jurors to hear this case with very little information about you. Yeah, and what if the information isn't even true? Imagine that. You've picked them based on something that's not even truthful. And then they're in charge of figuring out who is telling the truth, and then they're in charge of deciding if the defendant is guilty or not. Case after case after case after case. The jury's job will be to decide what the facts are and what the facts mean. Jurors should be as neutral as possible in this point and have no fixed opinion. That's from the judge's mouth. And I might add that they were placed under oath before the judge even began to speak. And this I thought was interesting too. The clerk said to the court, after swearing in the jurors, if it pleases the court, the veneer was placed under oath. The qualifying questions asked and answered, and all are qualified to serve as prospective jurors this morning. And may I introduce to the court our civic-minded citizens of Charlotte County. Woohoo! Does this sound like a joke to you? Certainly sounds like it was a joke to these people. And you know what? It wasn't to our client. Our client was on trial for his life. And they're making jokes. Those people were not all qualified because one of those jurors lied to get on the jury. And when we went back to court and exposed that juror, what happened? Yeah, you know. What should have happened? Well, they should have been interviewed by law enforcement. They should have been charged and criminally prosecuted by the state attorney's office, all at the direction of the judge, who should have been horrified that they came into his courtroom or hers and lied to their face, and then put an innocent man in prison. But you know why they don't care? Because, as I've heard them say, they got their verdict. This pattern has got to stop. This pattern is denying everyone coming into court their Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial by an impartial jury. You don't have a chance. I tell our clients, you walked into a trap. The state, the judge, the bailiff, the court reporter, the clerk, the state attorney, the witnesses, And the jurors, they're all the state. And who are they chosen by? Oh, I'm glad you asked me that. They are chosen by the clerk of court, aka the state, supposedly from jury pools that are random. But the jury pools are chosen most of the time from either the DMV, which is, as we know, a state-run entity, and the voter registration, which, again, state-run. So your jury pool is chosen from state organizations by a clerk of court, who is the state, and brought into a courthouse and a courtroom after given a summons, an engraved invitation, to come and enter and do your civic duty. Walked into a trap. I tell our clients almost on a daily basis, aside from you and your defense attorney, who may or may not have even been on your side, most of the time they are. And a huge shout out to public defenders. They are grossly underpaid and understaffed. I was told by a public defender that he has over 300 cases at any one given time, as opposed to his counterpart, the state attorney, who will have 50 to 75. How is that fair? Well, it's not. You walked into a trap. Besides you and your attorney and whatever friends or family sat behind you, came to support you that day, everyone in that courtroom was the state. They were all there to ensure that you went to prison. Fair trial. No fair trial. Case after case. This is Jackson County. Welcome to the circuit court. There's same thing. Same speech. I think they must have a book that they take this from. Voir dire essentially means to speak the truth. And what's going to happen here is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And I anticipate the other attorney is going to ask you a series of questions. I don't want to probe into your personal lives, your private lives. That's of no interest to me. These questions are directed towards one purpose and one goal, and that is to see if there's something in your background that could keep you from being fair and impartial. Yeah, sure. You believe those words. The judge said, "Everybody have a seat, please. Good morning, folks. Good morning. Why do y'all look so happy?" Laughter. All right. Would you swear the prospective jurors, please, to answer truthfully all questions put to them regarding their call to serve as jurors in the Circuit Court of Duval County, Florida? 56 jurors on the panel were all sworn, and all swore to tell the truth. What happened when we went back in court and showed that they didn't do that? Broken record. Again, it is your duty to answer completely and truthfully all of the questions that may be asked of you, and any failure to answer truthfully and completely may require the cause to end in a mistrial or be tried again. That is what should happen. You're right, Judge. That's what should happen. Did that happen? No. I love this one. Has anyone seen a figure? It's a statue. The name of the statue is Justice. Has anyone seen that? What does the blindfold mean on Justice? Why would Justice have on a blindfold? It means no bias. Does the blindfold mean impartiality? Yes. Here again. Before they even started answering questions, before the judge even welcomed them to the courtroom, the prospective jurors were sworn in by the clerk, who said, quote, "Would you each raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that you will make truthful answers to all questions which shall be put to you by the court or its authority regarding your competency to serve as a juror, so help you God? All prospective jurors answered in the affirmative. So help you God. Now you've lied to God. You've got liars judging liars. Is that fair? I don't think so. I am waiting on a judge to do the right thing. Please, for the love of God, would somebody do the right thing? Would you tell the truth when you're interviewing these jurors? Don't lie and say that you're going to hold them in contempt when you're not even going to talk to them. You're not even going to do that. You're not going to bring the defendant back into court. You're not going to grant them a new trial, but you should, because that's what you said you would do. Why aren't you? Our clients are in prison for life based on untruthful prosecutors, untruthful witnesses, untruthful jurors, and now to me, you have untruthful judges. They don't mean these words. They're just words on paper. They don't mean them. Our clients should be home. Where are they? They're still in prison. Why? Because some judge said, laws for thee, not for me. The judge said, all right, ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment. It'll probably be more than just a moment. In a few minutes, the state and the defense will be asking you some questions touching on your qualifications to serve in this particular case. This is a criminal case that we're selecting jurors for. Part of the trial is called the voir dire examination. And roughly translated, those two words mean, there are no right or wrong answers. Again, it's like a playbook. The object is to decide whether or not you can be fair and impartial. Our client has been, but at the jury selection, the judge said, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to courtroom A. We are here this morning specifically to select a jury, as you know. It's important for you to understand this morning that everybody involved in this process has the same goal, and that is to select a fair jury in this particular case. There are no wrong answers for you today. The questions you'll be asked today are simply for the lawyers to figure out who you are and blah, blah, background, experience, blah, blah, blah. The clerk said, please stand and raise your right hand. Administer the oath, and all the prospective jurors answered, I do. Then the judge said, let me read to you now the instructions that you need to hear before you begin. In order to have a fair and lawful trial, there are rules that all jurors must follow. Pay attention to these 3 sentences. Any juror who violates these restrictions jeopardizes the fairness of these proceedings, and a mistrial could result. A mistrial is a tremendous expense and an inconvenience to the parties, the court, and the taxpayers. If you violate these rules, you may be held in contempt of court and face sanctions such as serving time in jail, paying a fine, or both. Did the judge mean that? Why? Because when we showed that that juror died. So all these words, this is just 14 cases. All these words, just words on paper. It meant nothing to the judges. Did they lie when they said that bad things were going to happen if you didn't tell the truth? Apparently so. When I turned 18, which was a long time ago, my father took me down to register to vote on my birthday. I still remember it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I registered to vote. And then I asked my dad, I said, how do you decide who to vote for? And he said, well, and of course, this was back in the day before cell phones and before Google and all the internet. I mean, we basically had newspapers and Encyclopedia Britannica. He said, I always just say yes. He said, unless I've heard something negative about a judge, I just vote him back in. And I thought then, okay, I guess that makes sense. Knowing what I know now, that mindset is unthinkable to me. So what can you do? How do you know if a judge, and if any judge in your courthouse is one of those judges? How do you know? Well, I'll tell you. Here's what I suggest. Pick a day, any day. Go down to your courthouse and walk into a courtroom. Most trials, most hearings, most status checks are open to the public. And just sit in the back and watch and listen. I'm pretty confident that within a few minutes' time, you are going to know the character of that judge that's in front of you. Do they appear to be fair? Do they talk kindly and respectfully to those that are standing in front of them? Or the fact that you're wearing an orange jumpsuit causes them to be irritable? You will know. Go from one courtroom to another and listen. It won't take you, you won't even spend a day. Find out for yourself what kind of judges are in your county making decisions that affect you, your family, all the taxpayers, because you never know when you will be the one in the orange jumpsuit and you or someone you love will be the one praying to God that everyone there means what they say, from the judge to the bailiff, to the court reporter, to the state attorneys, to the witnesses, to the jurors, that they mean what they say, that you truly have a chance to be tried fairly and hopefully found not guilty. That's all for now. Thank you for watching and listening. I truly appreciate it. Be sure to like and subscribe and share these podcasts so that others will learn what's truly going on in courtrooms across America. We have to start holding judges accountable and demanding that they follow their own rules, their own laws. And when they say they're going to do things, that they do them. The courtrooms may be silent, but we won't be. We will continue to speak up. We will speak out, and we will always speak the truth. Thank you, and God bless.
All it takes is one to convict an innocent person. One Trojan juror, one biased agenda, one hidden motive. That's why we investigate juries. We identify the sinister players and expose them. Jury investigations. Our number one objective is to get you back into the courtroom, because a guilty verdict doesn't have to be the end of the story.